Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Dermott. I'm here with my friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. We're also here with a very special guest, writer extraordinaire, covers the Raptors, Mr. Blake Murphy. Woo! What's up, Blake?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we also have intern Erica here. You know who is not here is our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. He really wanted to be here.
Let's pour a little liquor for Shane.
We'll pour a little liquor out. We were gonna do this in the morning. We're recording this on a Friday evening, and he couldn't be here. He had to go home and take care of his kid Lucy.
Yeah, he was mad at me though because he thought I wasn't sad enough that he wasn't on this podcast.
He did in the group
so
chat.
basically in the group chat, he's like, "What did he write? Let me pull it up." He goes, "Hey, I can't make it. Can basketball guy just be my replacement?" Yeah. And then I just responded, "Yep, that's no prob," like with no punctuation or anything. And then he goes, "No prob? Show a little disappointment." So we're thinking of you, buddy.
Yeah, he wanted he wanted to be here because he was hoping to get the Raptors dirt out of you. Yes. Which there might not even be Raptors dirt, but we're not going to do that.
We'll
today.
say that for another episode then.
Yeah.
Or off air.
Yeah. We got Blake Murphy, Toronto's finest basketball writer. I'm going to give you that distinction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Of The Athletic, everybody. And truth be told, we hung out with Blake last night for about 5 hours. And I don't know if we have any questions left, to be honest.
I know.
Because it just ended up us just sitting in a booth at the Drake Hotel.
Just peppering him with questions.
Yeah. Did you feel like, was it exhausting for you?
No.
No?
No, I mean, that's the thing is it's just talking basketball still.
Uh-huh.
So,
But I can imagine there's some sports reporters out there, like we know Dave Hodge, for instance, or Stephen Brunt, and they've been around longer. They're pretty recognizable, and I think they get a little annoyed when they get like Leafs fans coming up to them like wanting to talk shop. So I was wondering, are we that guy for Blake last night?
no, I think the level of distinction between them is that like we were all hanging out like as friends. It wasn't
Yeah.
like I wasn't at the Drake and you guys didn't come up and start asking me a bunch of questions out of nowhere unprompted.
Sure.
We were all hanging out and like I'm bothering you with music questions.
Sure.
It was a little quid pro quo.
Yeah, awesome.
It was a fun hang. So for our listeners, we're recording this on a Friday evening. Tomorrow the Raptors open round 2 against Philadelphia 76ers at home. So we wanted to have Blake on not only to talk about the Raptors, which we'll do at the end because I feel like he goes on every podcast and sets up the series. We're sort of more interested in sort of Blake's journey, how he became a professional writer and someone that covers the Raptors in the NBA. Because personally, I'm a fan. I've been reading Blake for like a decade or whatever it's been.
Yeah, Mike gets pretty giddy when he gets a text from you. He'll be like, "I was talking to Blake Murphy, no big deal."
Well, sometimes too, because we follow each other on Instagram, and like something will happen, or he'll post something, and then I'll like respond to the Insta or whatever. But I don't want to like abuse it and be like, "What's going on here? Why is Nick Nurse making these choices?" Because I'm like, he's probably getting 1,000 of those from his friends, and then other readers. But we're pals, so it's
we
fun,
also
fun to go that way.
have intern Erica.
Oh, how did I leave you out?
That's okay.
So it was because
Sorry.
I started talking. That's how it happened.
Oh, right,
Yeah, my
Erica,
fault,
how's it
my fault.
going?
Good.
Thanks for coming in on a Friday evening.
No problem.
Are you as excited about this Raptors round 2 as we are?
Yep. I am. I'm pumped. Who are they playing?
76ers.
Philadelphia.
Oh,
Philly.
Joel Embiid.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
He's
sweet.
funny on the internet.
See, so Joel actually supersedes sports as like a sort of internet comedian or troll or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, those commercials for Hulu are very good. Have you seen the Hulu commercials?
Yes.
I'm sure.
Okay, so where do we want to start? First of all, so Blake, I've been reading you since Raptors Republic. I think that's sort of like where I found you. Did you start Raptors Republic?
Kind of. So Sam and Zarar, who are the other two guys that kind of own a share of it with me, they each had their own Raptors site back when ESPN was trying to launch the True Hoop Network, where the idea was it was kind of SB Nation before SB Nation. It was like, let's have a blog for every team, and then we'll all link to each other, and there will be like a little toolbar where you can just jump from team blog to team blog. So they grabbed Sam and Zarar to start the Raptors one, and then Sam and Zarar had read my stuff when I just had like blakemurphy.com or whatever my site was called at the time, and I was just doing it for fun, and they were like, hey, come do this with us. So I wasn't like, I didn't start it, but I was like the first person they added, and I think that was like, it was DeMar's draft year. The first thing I ever wrote for Raptors Republic was like a DeMar Summer League, like how did he look at Summer League.
Oh, man.
And you rewind a bit before that. BlakeMurphy.com. How old were you when you were writing for your own site? There?
I started, so third year of undergrad. So
Where'd
that
you
would have
go?
been like I went to Queens.
Okay, cool.
I got a business degree there, and like 2000. So it would have been 2007. I was just like, oh, it was March Madness. I was like, oh, I'll just like write up a March Madness thing, and it'll be jokey, and like everyone's reading Bill Simmons at the time. It's like maybe I could do like a fourth rate version of Bill Simmons, and it was like people seemed to enjoy it. And I was like, and I enjoyed doing it. So for the next like, I don't know, the next year or so, I kind of just did it for fun on the side, and then Raptors Republic kind of came in, and it was like, oh, I actually like have a home for this that'll do more than like my friends looking at it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's like I feel like in some ways, as I've watched like sort of your ascension from like you guys doing this Raptors Republic thing, which is like a fan blog that doesn't have access to the actual team. You're sort of writing from the same point of view as anybody that's watching the games, and then you sort of build that, and then you get access, and it sort of grows your career. I had this fantasy back in like the mid 2000s that I was going to start like a blog called like the New Rap City or something.
Me too.
You had the same
course.
thing. Yeah, because like I love basketball. I'll write about it after every game, and then of course you never do it. So you actually did it, and I kind of watched, and it's like you actually followed this trajectory where it's like, shit, like he did it. It works. Like now he's literally like a legitimate guy that has these relationships with the players on the team, and this is your career.
Yeah, it's obviously it took some time, and I probably stalled it more than I needed to by like once I got my degree, I went and I was working an office job, and I was writing, maybe 2 times a week just for fun until I decided, hey, I'm going to actually try this. So maybe I could have sped that up more, but even then, like I went to UBC to get a master's of journalism. And basically my idea was I don't care about the school part. I can now justify writing like 40 hours a week. So I got tons of reps in then, and I was doing baseball and hockey at the time as well, and doing a lot of like analytics stuff, and was like covering Sloan conferences, those MIT Sloan conferences and stuff. So basically I took a year that was like, oh, all I'm going to worry about is building my byline and building my rep and like making connections and stuff. And then it sort of started to pick up speed. And then I did 2 years at the Score while I had Raptors Republic on the side. And then like all of that kind of like slowly built the momentum of like, oh, now I can get a foot in the door because the Raptors know who I am. And then you kind of slowly, each successive step after that. I probably could have done it a little quicker if I hadn't worked an office job for a little while.
Got to get paid though, man.
Got to get paid. I had to have like I had to pay off a little bit of student debt so that I could comfortably go back to school and not be like just drowning and working every odd job under the sun.
Yeah, that's interesting. You reference Simmons as sort of a model because I love Bill Simmons, and I've been probably reading him and following him probably for 10 years now. And I think for a lot of people of our age, seeing the way he did it, where he's like, he wasn't necessarily part of an institution at first, but he just was very excited to write. Like that is very aspirational. It's also, he's an anomaly in a lot of ways. Like there's only really one Bill Simmons. I mean, there's other bloggers that have become very successful. But was it hard for you to write regularly in college? Because I feel like if I've wrote one blog post, I go, oh God, that was exhausting. I don't know if I ever want to do that again.
Do you remember? So you guys had recorded the album. Maybe it was High Noon or Morning Report. I don't know which one it was. But we were driving back across America.
Yeah.
It's me, you, Nick from the band, and my brother, and we stopped in Kansas, and we decided to go see Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid play. They're playing.
I have
for
a
the
byline
Jayhawks.
too, my friend.
Nice.
So the way we got in, basically, did we buy tickets?
No, basically.
We bought tickets,
Yeah.
and then Max made a few calls and somehow swung it so that he would write like
Classic.
a column like for Sportsnet from the sidelines. So then this fucking guy ends up sitting courtside, and me, Nick, and Greg are in the nosebleeds at this Jayhawks
It was
game.
a real coup. I just texted Stephen Brunt, who I've known for a long time. I was like, yo, Stephen, I want to go to this game. I'll write for Sportsnet. Are they sending anybody to that game? But it was like the first regular season game against like Southern Alabama State or something, like some no-name school that Kansas was just going to crush. So they weren't sending anybody. I was like, I'll be the guy. So it exists on the internet. I don't know if it's any
You can
good.
find Max's article about that time.
But I do remember it being very hard, and I was like, "Oh God, this is a lot of work," And I was just very insecure about it all. I mean, going to the game was sick, but
Blake, when you hear these stories about Max, like, taking away a spot for a sports writer, you're like, you scabby hack.
Yeah.
Is that how you feel?
I'd have to read the piece first.
Yeah.
Oh!
If it was good and refreshing, I'd be like, awesome. Get a new perspective in there. Let's mix it up.
Yeah.
All
But
right,
yeah,
you let me know.
If you went in there and wrote, I won't name names. If you wrote the exact same thing reporter X would have written, then maybe.
Actually, I saw somebody tweet the other day about like the Time 100 influential people list that just came out, and it's celebrities writing about other celebrities, and a journalist was like, "This is taking away work from us." Like, These aren't like, because to be honest, like Shawn Mendes' thing on Taylor Swift wasn't grade A journalism. Like, and I like Shawn Mendes a lot, but read it for yourself and you can decide.
Well, I feel like writers, you see a lot of sports writers get snarky about the Players Tribune because they feel like they're all being ghostwritten, but obviously being credited to the athlete.
Explain what the Players Tribune is.
So the Players Tribune is it's like a website started by I think Derek Jeter and some other athletes, and it's like a first person sort of perspective. So if I'm DeMar DeRozan and I want to write a piece, I would write it myself and put it on the Players Tribune. He hasn't written one, but like Kevin Love did one, for instance. But I feel like sports writers on Twitter get kind of like snarky with little jokes about how they're clearly ghostwritten. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, they're definitely ghost written, but it's more of a like we would sit down with a mic on and we'd have a long conversation about the topic, and then I would ghost write it up.
Have you done that?
I have not.
Okay.
I have some friends in the industry who have. Basically, yeah, you sit down, you have the conversation, you write the thing from the player's perspective, then you send it to them. They kind of, oh, I didn't mean this, or like, hey, what if we tell it this way? I don't mind it that much. I think it has, I don't buy it's taking away reps from journalists because no journalist will get that level of access with the player.
Right.
And I think it's important for fans to get even if it's not quote unquote written by the player, that's a player told story and it's a player directed story
in their voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is, in their voice, all of them sound like they're the exact same talking.
Yeah.
Except for the Darius Miles one was like,
Yeah,
that's a cool one,
like
yeah,
that one, yeah.
That one, it was like maybe Darius Miles wrote this one because it's not the very same structure and voice and stuff. But no, I think it very much has a place, and it's something that. The idea that it's taking something away from journalists, no journalist would be able to do that if Players Tribune didn't exist. So
Yeah.
You're at The Athletic now.
I am.
And I remember when The Athletic came about, I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting idea. And the idea is a subscription service. So it's every article is behind the paywall, right?
Yeah. Occasionally they will open one up.
Okay.
It's like drugs. They give you a taste for free, and then they keep you coming back.
But the cool thing was when it came out, I was hopeful about it, but I was also a little bit like, is this going to last? Because nobody wants to pay for anything. But the Athletic came out staunchly as, no, this is going to be good journalism and you're going to pay for it. And it seems like it's growing and doing really well. Can you give us an idea of how the business is going and just where that philosophy came from?
Yeah. So, the fact that it's in, I think, every hockey, basketball, baseball, and football market now.
Yeah.
Obviously they've tried to scale it very quickly. So I think if you were looking at their bottom line, it is not there yet, but they have, they've done enough investment that they have a bit of runway here to experiment. But they're already starting to see, I don't know if I am supposed to say this or not, but Toronto is self-sustaining. Toronto
pays for itself.
Based on the subscriptions and based on the staff and stuff. Toronto as an independent silo could sustain now.
Which reminds me, I lost my credit card and then I
Are
canceled
you
it.
going to ask him for a free subscription?
No, I just got an email from The Athletic today saying your credit card didn't work to pay for it because I am a subscriber. But that's because I lost it in Portland. I'll re-up though.
I signed up immediately because I knew they had Blake and Eric Corrine, who I also like writing, who's also your podcast buddy on the Reasonableist. Sorry, so and that's also a podcast on The Athletic. Go listen to it, subscribe. And then I found out a month later, my brother was like, "Oh yeah, I got it too, but I got it $4.99. He got some deal that I didn't get." And then I was like, "Damn it!"
So if anyone,
money's going to a good place though.
If anyone is listening and ever goes to subscribe, first of all, do it off of one of my articles, so then I get credit for driving the
Oh, there you
subscription.
go. Okay.
But also, if you ever so anytime you do it, it'll they'll just flash a random discount at you. Usually when you go to sign up, if it's not as at least 40%, DM me and I'll be able to find a 40% code somewhere. There are always 40% codes kicking around.
And if you got the money, just pay full price.
Yeah, and also sign up to Crave and watch Mike on Much in Conversation with interviews with Sting, Shaggy, lots of.
I was trying to push Crave on people today. All the Philadelphia writers descended upon Toronto today, and they're all worried about not being able to watch Game of Thrones on Sunday. So I'm like, here's what you do: subscribe to Crave.
And then cancel.
Check out the Mike on Much podcast, and then watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and if people do want to DM you about that 40% off, you're at Blake Murphy on Twitter.
Blake Murphy ODC.
What is ODC?
So the very first blog site I ever created was originally I was only going to write about baseball, and it was the On Deck Circle. And it very quickly I was just like, I'll just make it blakemurphy.com. It's way easier. But for a little bit that was my site, and then when I went to sign up for Twitter, Blake Murphy was taken.
Oh,
I'll throw ODC at the back of it.
And you have
you know me.
Erica jumping in with the tunes. You have over 22,000 followers on Twitter.
I guess so.
Yeah. Were you conscious in sort of like building that in the sense that you're like, I think this is good for, future work or to show people that, or was it just this natural sort of thing that happened organically because you had the info on the...
Yeah, it was mostly natural. Early on, I tried to use it to not networking in the like kind of douchey, like I'm hanging out at a conference trying to get everyone's business card way, but when I was a low follower person, interacting with other writers who I liked, and trying to build relationships that way. So when I was thinking about going to the Score, I had developed a Twitter relationship with like Drew Fairservice, and I could be like, hey, Drew, or Andrew Stoughton, and be like, hey, what's it like there? Do you think this is a good move or whatever? I developed a relationship with Jonah Carey that way, and then I ended up helping him out on his Expos book. I got to do a bunch of transcriptions for him, and it counted as internship hours for me.
Wow.
Because I went to them. My program was not specifically sports journalism. I was like, hey, there aren't a lot of sports journalism internships. Like, what if I help this guy do his book and just transcribe all the interviews? So, but yeah, that came about just like trying to use Twitter to like build relationships and stuff like that.
I feel like that's like a common theme in journalism is you have to be crafty. There has to be a sense of like entrepreneurship to be able to like make the relationships, to see who can help you out, and do it in a very sort of like thoughtful, mature way, because you don't want to be that annoying person. This is that fine
line. It has
line.
to be somewhat organic,
Yeah.
right? It has to be, I'm watching a Blue Jays game and I'm interacting with this person. I'm not just tweeting at them to be like, hey, what can you do for me?
To try and get opportunities.
Yeah, I mean,
People can
and part
smell
of it
that.
is like Twitter is also during a game and during big events. It's pretty fun, so it just kind of happens naturally. But in terms of not spamming people or not using it as callously, I had for a really long time had a rule where I would only tweet my stories at once. I didn't want to be that guy that was like, hey, in case you missed it, here's my story and read my story and read my story. Twitter's not super good for driving traffic to the web anyway.
Right.
But yeah, that was one of the ways I was like, don't be an ass about over promoting with Twitter or whatever. And now now it's just autopilot. I don't really think about Twitter usage. It's just dumb jokes and here are my articles.
Yeah.
Just the dumbest jokes during Raptors
I like
games
your
after
jokes.
blowouts. Yeah.
Well, you had a popular tweet, but we won't talk about it because Can we talk about your mom going to listen to this podcast?
There's no way my mom's listening to this podcast.
he had a hilarious tweet that the Raptors were playing the Magic and the Magic were down very big, and his tweet I believe said, "I haven't seen the Magic die this fast since my parents' divorce."
Something like
Paraphrasing
that.
it, and which was Erica
That's
liked
good,
that
that's
one.
good.
So it's like got over like 3,000 like likes and all this stuff. It like blew up, but I saw it in pretty like real time, which was hilarious. And then I asked you about it, and you were saying that your mom does follow you on Twitter, and you were glad she didn't see it because it kind of got buried.
Yeah,
in the
my mom
tweets.
will like do a like once every week or 2 weeks sweep of my Twitter, just like, hey, what's Blake up to? And if I ever, I will be open sometimes, but like mental health stuff or like dating or whatever, and those ones always get noticed where it's like, hey, are you okay? Or
that's something
she
that's kinda-
missed that one though. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe she'll circle back. One of the things that I find interesting about you is how you do tend to be sort of like vulnerable more so than like a sports writer. And Eric Kareen has a bit of that, and I know that you guys, like I said, do the podcast together. Is that like a conscious effort to be like, you did a whole piece like comparing, like you used Saves the Day, or who was it?
Take It Back Sunday.
Take It Back Sunday as like a metaphor for sports, and you're sort of you're very sort of open about your love for emo and those sort of things. Is that like were you like, I'm gonna do this because it's just me and I'm sort of like I want to be the most sort of vulnerable I can to people, or are you like, this is actually a good angle and no one else is doing it?
No, it's not the angle thing. It's just I hit a certain point. There was like a long stretch where I was very guarded about all of that stuff, and then I don't know. I just think that like authenticity is like the best approach to whatever you're doing, and it was, those tweets or those stories turn some people off, but also that helps build relationships with readers or like friends that I make online or whatever. So I don't know. I've just always kind of felt that like being as authentic as possible.
Yeah, letting people in is a great way to make a connection, right? Because I think people eventually would just want to root for you because they feel like they know you and they know your story and what you're about. And I feel like a lot of sports, right? Like I love when Tony Kornheiser or Bill Simmons like talks about their family, because I'm like, oh, this is an old pal at this point. These people, and that's what you are for a lot of Toronto Raptors, like an old pal, and it's not just like reporting on the X's and O's. Even like Zach Lowe's a little bit more mechanical, and that's that's part of the service that he provides as a basketball journalist. But knowing that his wife is from Toronto, and knowing that they go to Croatia every summer, and knowing that his dad was a great swimming coach in Connecticut or whatever, like those details, I'm like, I want to root for Zach Lowe more because I know those details. So I think it's a good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it applies to obviously more than just writing. It's just, I think, we're like, not to get too like big picture or whatever, but like we live in like fairly nihilistic times right now where like there's a lot of bullshit and a lot of like cynicism and stuff. And it's, I feel like authenticity is pretty important, and it's like, it can be refreshing. There are times where I put stuff out there and afterward I'm like, shit, I wish I hadn't talked about that. I wish I hadn't have ended an article with a joke about how single I am or whatever. But sometimes you have to break the. Also, like, a basketball season is really long, and I write a lot of basketball content, and sometimes it's just nice to like break it up and just make it a little different.
So okay, on that point, because I think Mike and I both have fantasies of being like a beat reporter. Like, you've had that fantasy
absolutely.
for like probably like once a week, and like we grew up watching a lot of sports, and sports personalities and journalists are like still heroes to me. So can you walk us through what a day covering the Raptors looks like, or like a week, say, because I know not every day is different, but like just like walk us through your day.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So like tomorrow's game 1. The Raptors have canceled shoot around for tomorrow, which is nice because I can have a couple beers at the Blue Jays game now. But had they had shoot around in the morning, I'd show up Scotiabank like 9:45 maybe. You talk to, like, Nick Nurse will get brought out for a scrum, and usually 1 or 2 players. Then you go and like transcribe, and then tomorrow's a Saturday afternoon, so I wouldn't be writing. Like, there's just not enough time between that session and the game for anyone to read it. So then I just do whatever, like go eat lunch and then come back. Usually I get to the arena fairly early for games and like get a picture of the t-shirts and like watch the like third team guys work out and like kind of shoot the. Sorry, I realized I sweared earlier. Can I swear? Okay, like shoot the shit with some of the coaches or staff or whatever. And then about 2 hours before the game, media time starts, and like you get each coach. The locker room opens up for half an hour. So like an hour 45 before the game, both coaches will speak back to back. And then an hour 15 before the game, the locker room opens up for half an hour. I try, now that it's playoffs, I try not to loiter in the locker room too much unless I really need something, just because like everyone's more hyper-focused. But in the regular season, it would be like go in, like see what's going on, catch up with Fred VanVleet or, talk to Jordan Lloyd about the 9:05 game the day before or whatever. If it's a January game against Charlotte, they don't mind nearly as much if you're in their space, but you try to be aware that that's their workspace.
Yeah.
Then the game happens, and throughout the game, I kind of take notes, and I'm trying to think of like, what am I going to write after the game? Game ends, quick media time. Like you talk to the coach, locker room opens after the game. Sometimes the players are gone. Sometimes like Kawhi does this thing where it might be like his schedule anyway, but sometimes if he maybe doesn't want to talk to the media, he'll just like go upstairs and work out. It's like you just played 40 minutes and you're going to get a lift in.
Yeah.
And then, then it's like daring everyone. You want to wait this out? You want to wait out my leg day just to get a meaningless quote?
So he just won't be in the locker room and you just get everybody else.
Yeah.
Right?
And then everyone kind of splits up the transcription. I would write, because it's the playoffs right now, so Saturday I will write at the arena like something about the game, and then when I get home, I'll write another thing that'll go up the morning after that's kind of more stats and video-y, but I have to wait for like the game to go up on League Pass and the advanced stats to update and things like that, so that's more of a like get home and like write that until 2 or 3, or sometimes like don't write it then, get up at like 7 in the morning and write it. And then the day after that, it's like, get that up, and then practice is usually around 11 on a non-game day. So go to OVO Athletic Center there from like 11 to 2, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like a coach comes out, you get 1 or 2 players, you transcribe, you figure out what your idea is, you write, and then you do that whole, it's kind of a 2-day cycle that just repeats like that.
Okay, so here's a question. You were talking last night about how you have a pretty good relationship with all your reporter colleagues, the people that work for the Globe and the Toronto Star, and everybody spends so much time together that there's just generally like a good vibe and a good relationship. Do you guys talk to each other and be like, hey, let me talk to so-and-so first because this is a particular, like, is there conversations, or is everybody just like once the locker room doors open, everybody's like, go?
Because
No.
there's like camaraderie, but it's also still competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets a little awkward sometimes where like one-on-one time with a guy is so valuable, but after a game, there's not like it's not like a receiving line of like Kyle Lowry will come down and talk to me one-on-one, and then you one-on-one, and then you one-on-one. So usually whoever the 2 or 3 biggest stories from the game are, they'll just do a scrum, and like you can try the whole walk away with them, but in tight quarters after a game, you're probably not getting it. So, if Kyle Lowry drops 30 and Kawhi drops 40, you know that Kyle and Kawhi are going to scrum and everyone's going to get the same quotes. But then there are situations where, like, oh, maybe I'm working on an angle on Danny Green that day and no one is talking to Danny Green, or there's a scrum over here and I'm going to talk to Danny Green over here. Then you talk a little bit, like there was an example today, two different reporters needed to talk to Kyle Lowry, and I overheard them talking before. They're like, what are your questions like? Like, if we overlap, we may as well do this at the same time. Just share the answers, because otherwise Kyle Lowry has to do 2 interviews, and he gets...
It's almost like The
ornery about it.
Bachelor. It's like, can I steal him for a second?
Can I have a
Yeah,
second?
that's basically it. There is a lot of that, and like media relations obviously controls some of that. I can't just like... I'm never going to just grab Kawhi and be like, hey, Kawhi, you have a second? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's Kawhi. If I want to do that with Patrick McCaw, it's a little different. So
Do you find the organization sort of like, do they sort of shield Kawhi in some ways? Like, is he treated differently? Like, say you did break off Rogan, you're like, hey, Kawhi, can I have a second? Would that be weird? Like, would someone say, hey, don't do that?
no, I mean, they trust me at this point that if I'm doing something like that, it's for a good reason, and I'll be, respectful of his time or whatever. With Kawhi, it was kind of just established early that like Kawhi is how Kawhi is, and just people they don't really shoot their shot with that with Kawhi. Like, it's more common that they would try it with Kyle, or in years past, like DeMar was usually pretty generous with his time. So yeah, you could try it, and it's within the rules of what you're allowed to do, but it's just kind of like everyone's like, it's Kawhi. He's not.
Yeah.
And you talked about having a really good relationship with Fred VanVleet. So to walk us through, and that's a well-known thing, I think, in the sports world, is that certain reporters can develop relationships with certain athletes and they'll have more access. So like, how did it work with you and Fred? Like, how did you guys connect?
So actually, I was the only reporter out really, or I guess, anyways, the Summer League that they signed him as an undrafted free agent, he was out with them at Summer League. I'm usually one of the only reporters.
You go to Vegas for Summer League?
I do.
Sick.
Yeah.
I've heard it's amazing.
It's so much fun. It's
We should
so
do that
much
this year.
basketball.
We should totally do that. People.
July 5th to 15th.
Oh, that sounds like a blast.
That'd be real nice.
Yeah, it was Simmons and Russillo were talking about it. It's just like the best time. Or it was Zach Lowe maybe. But yeah.
It's
really
it's
fun.
great. You get like there are 8 basketball games over the course of the day in 2 like connected gyms.
That's amazing.
It's insanity. So I was one of the only reporters there, and I was doing a story on him. I was very high on him coming out of college anyway, and when he went undrafted, he was like, I put out a list of like, hey, here are 5 guys the Raptors should, maybe kick the tires on, and he was one of them. So I was trying to talk to him and trying to write a story, and he just like, he kind of let slip that he had signed, and I was like, oh my God, like,
That's news.
yeah. But
You mean you didn't come up to him and be like, look at my website. I wrote about you.
no,
Look. Just waving your phone.
No,
in
I
his
never
face.
do. I've never send players stuff that I have written on them, or like some reporters will tag athletes in articles they wrote. I don't think there's any harm in that. Like, if you get a retweet on that, that's good for your story and stuff. I'm just not comfortable.
Do you have
doing it?
players' numbers, like so that you can just ask
Some
for
of
a
them,
quote?
Some of them, yeah. I try not to use it for a quote. I'll try to. If I use it, it'll be like, hey, I need to talk to you about this thing. Like, can I grab you after practice or something like that?
You never do like you up?
Look, I have occasionally look when the DeMar trade went down. I maybe felt out what some people were feeling about it,
Was it because you were like crying and emotional and drunk at 2 in the morning?
and then also celebrating because it was Kawhi.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Man, I know that was wild. But you were messaging other players to see, like, get the vibe for their like a temperature check.
Yeah, like nothing I was gonna run with. I just like immediately everyone has these takes out there, right? Like Kyle's so mad, or like the team thinks this, and it's just like, hey, you just want to feel, because like that happens in mid-July where I'm not gonna see any of those guys for 2 months either, right? So. But yeah, I try to be very respectful of the space, and like that players would probably like to keep me at arm's length.
Sure.
But yeah, with VanVleet, that happened at Summer League, and then I was like, he was like, I don't know if I was supposed to say that, and so I was like cool about it. I wasn't like, no, you said it. I'm putting it out there.
Even though it was on the record?
Yeah.
You let it.
And
yeah.
eventually I did break, like I was the one who put out there that he signed, but I was like, I wasn't going to burn him. And I think that starts to develop a little trust. And then his rookie year, I'm also one of the only guys who ever goes to 905 games. So then I'm a familiar face and I'm talking to him regularly. It was the same with Siakam or Norman Powell or Bruno, whoever. Like the 905 guys, I'm the only one who's there and then sees them at Raptors games. So at one point, Fred said to me, like when Fred was like on the come up last year, he joked to me, he's like, man, I miss when you were the only one who wanted to talk to me, because suddenly he's such a good quote that everyone wants to talk to him every day.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. Like I was in on the ground floor with some of those guys, and like I don't have that relationship with Kyle or Kawhi or new acquisitions or whatever. It's something you kind of build by being around a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's like success in this business often has to do with like who they happen to meet at
But
the
also-
right time and place.
But also being there.
No, but being there, of
that's
course.
the thing. Like doing the 905, going to Vegas, and all that stuff. It's like you're putting yourself in these positions.
Of
and
course, of
the
course.
Pascal Siakam relationship could pay. He might be a superstar.
You
the
might
way
be
he's
writing
trending.
the Pascal book in 10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I mean, like I did a
The
thing.
Windhorse to Pascal.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
no,
like
no.
Windhorst, like obviously that guy works really hard, and I think he's an amazing journalist. He also happened to be from Akron, Ohio. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And he was like a young, keen guy, and was like, I'm gonna follow around this high school guy, and that ended up being LeBron James. So
This is actually going to be your in, is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander being a Hamilton
that's
kid.
right.
He went to my high school.
Really?
I went to Sir Allen McNabb, man. Yeah. You mentioned Kyle for a second, and like just going up to him and asking him a question. I thought it was interesting for our listeners. There's a very funny thing out right now. It's called Game of Zones.
I watched that lot.
I
this
saw
morning.
it too. So funny.
So funny, and it's all about the DeMar and Kyle trade, which Blake was just alluding to. But nobody at the scrum today, or I guess it was more of a presser. He was sitting at the podium, asked about the Game of Zones. What's up?
I did not ask about it because I would imagine he wasn't happy with his portrayal in it, and where he is so kind of like hot and cold with the media, it just didn't feel like the right day to like, especially because like these are the first media availabilities before a series. Like these are pretty big media availabilities in terms of there's a lot of media there and everyone needs that stuff. It doesn't feel like the right time to jump in with like a jokey question where the answer could go the wrong way and kind of sour the whole
Ruin
session.
the press
Yeah.
conference.
Oh, sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Someone did ask Jakob Pertl, though. Did you see that clip?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, one of the San Antonio guys asked Yak. He was doing a presser, and they go, "Have you seen Game of Zones?" And he goes, "Ha, no comment." And then he goes, "Yeah, I saw it."
Yeah.
And they go, "What'd you think?" He goes, "It was pretty funny."
Yeah, he was clearly motivated last night. He had a great game,
Yeah.
apparently. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that subject matter, I think so much of the intrigue with NBA is just the personalities and the culture around the game itself. And I love NBA gossip. Like I go on the Reddit page, the NBA Reddit page, all the time, and there's an industry built around that. So a question for you is, I'm sure know so much more than you're able to write about and talk
report.
about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
no,
do.
it's true. And like because but like a bit about the personal lives of the players and the coaches, and I'm sure about squabbles and disagreements that happen behind the scenes. I guess the question is, how do you decide what is appropriate to write about and what is just pure tabloid trash that you don't want to go near? What's the code? I guess
It's different for everyone. There are some people who, if they overhear something, they think that's free reign. For me, it's you have to balance your relationship with the team and your relationship with the players. And I intend to be around for a while. So you have a certain amount of capital you can use, and you have to kind of judge. Is this tiny little thing that isn't all that relevant? Like, is that worth it? Now, anything that could impact the actual play on the court, my bar tends to be a little lower for that because I feel like it's more newsworthy than if it's more related to actual basketball
What's
games.
an example of that?
I don't know, like say two players blew up at each other in the locker room,
Oh, okay.
and the team is trying to be like,
report
we
it.
don't want that out there. It's like, well, if those two guys play 20 minutes a game together and they're having miscommunications on the court and it's blowing over, that's something that is relevant to the team and relevant to their performance. Now, if it's something like, player X went out with player Y's ex, then it's like, okay, well, that's too gossipy or whatever. That example has never happened before. One example that I won't use the players' names. I overheard one player giving another player the worst dating advice I've ever heard one time.
What was the advice?
Basically, it was when you fly someone out, make sure you get a return ticket so they know when they have to go home.
Oh,
That's good advice.
that's not bad advice.
I feel like it's
that's
kind
the
of
female.
shallow advice, and then also it missed the step where like why are you flying someone in if you don't actually like them and want to spend time with them?
I think we know, Blake.
But I mean, look at the city you live in.
What do you mean?
Just the
Like-
amount of options that are available.
Yeah,
in this very
like
town.
like
Sure.
if it's absolutely fly someone in if you like them and you're smitten by them and you're excited to spend time
Oh,
with them.
but-
If it's just like a transactional thing like that, why even bother with that? Why?
There's plenty everywhere, is what you're saying here in Toronto.
Yes, I'm trying not to
No, I get what
be
you're
a
saying.
jerk about it.
Yeah.
I just
See, this is why we
No,
need
we've all been
Shane.
to
Shane
King
would just be
West,
very
we know.
blunt with this stuff.
Yeah, he'd have a lot of opinions.
Anyway, so it's basically just like finding that trade-off and weighing, how much basketball relevance does it have, how much news relevance does it have, and then how much capital of mind does it kind of use up if I go with it.
So I was listening to Michael Lewis, who's one of my favorite writers, on Bill Simmons' podcast, and he talked about how he was pretty close to writing a book by spending a season with Popovich, like a full season, like basically on the bench with his staff and just like observing how he does his job. And I thought that was a great idea for a book. Jack McCallum did that with 7 Seconds or Less Phoenix
that
Suns.
book, yeah.
That's a great book too.
And like maybe the best one is Breaks of the Game. The
Blazers.
Bill Walton
That's
Blazers.
Halberstam, right?
Yeah.
That's David Halberstam. So my question for you is: do you have any like long-term, bigger pictures bigger long-term ideas that you'd like to chase after?
Yeah, I have some kicking around. Honestly, I'm not well established enough yet to like really think about those things in earnest because you probably have to take a year off of whatever your actual job is. So like I am not well established financially or like with a certain institute, like with a certain outlet where like that'll be realistic for the next little bit. But yeah, I've thought about it, especially like the season the Raptors are having.
Yeah.
And next year's the 25th anniversary, and it's going to be right around when Vince retires and maybe comes back into the fold with the organization. Like the next 12 months could be really interesting for the Raptors, and there will probably be books written about it if all goes well.
go all the way, yeah.
Now, the publishers would probably go to like a Doug Smith type or a Michael
Sure.
Grange type that have been around the beat all the time. But yeah, those ideas float around in my head.
Sure.
The extra 2% that Jonah Carey wrote about
Of course, yeah.
Tampa Bay Rays is like one of my favorite books, and I feel like he didn't take a year off to just follow that team, but going really, really deep on a team or a situation, especially when there are cross-industry takeaways from the story there. I think that would be really interesting. I hope there's someone out there who's doing a book about the Rockets right now and how they've just like, the Warriors exist, so our only way to do this is to go with this extreme strategy. I think there's a cool book there, and it would have applications across, like outside of just basketball. So
I'm always fascinated because obviously you got into this job because you love sports. You were a Raptors fan before this was your full-time job. And I'm always interested, and you hear this all the time where, Simmons obviously has made sort of a career by being like, oh, I'm still a Celtics homer even though I write about basketball or whatever. But then someone like Zach Lowe has said, I'd no longer root for a team, but when I was a kid, I rooted for them. Was it hard for you to relinquish your fandom, 1? 2, have you even relinquished it? 3, do you find yourself rooting for the Raptors from press row?
Not from press row, but up until this season, when I was freelancing full time, there was also this relationship between 1, wanting the Raptors to do well because I was a Raptor fan. 2, you maybe don't root for them, but like you're around these people all the time, and for the most part, you hope that nice things happen to them and that they do well. But also, my income was tied to how well the Raptors did.
Longer season.
So like the Raptors getting bounced unceremoniously in the second round was not great for me. I had been like, well, maybe this is a conference finals run, and maybe that means this much income. It's like, well, now I'm out a couple weeks of playoff income. So there was also like that weird thing where it's like, oh, I want them to do well because also I'll get more money.
Yeah, Sure. totally.
That's, now I'm on salary at the Athletic, so it doesn't really matter. But no, I don't think. Obviously, I've relinquished some parts of fandom. You have to relinquish the like unabashed homerism. You can't cheer in the press box. The first playoff game I ever covered was in the Nets series, and Amir had like a big steal and dunk, and I remember like fist pumping, and then a couple people like looked at me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is where I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. So you have to give up things like that. I joke with William Liu, who is a friend of mine and is at Yahoo Sports now and is a great Raptors writer. I joke with him all the time that he hasn't let go of any of that, and like half his Twitter feed during games is yelling about the
That's
refs.
how angry he is. That's why I enjoy reading him so much,
Yeah.
because he's, Arsenalist who
Yeah,
is still at
Zarar.
Raps.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy his articles back in the day because he was just so pissed off all the time, which really reflected how I felt after like a bad loss to Sacramento and I'd stayed up to watch the West Coast game.
Yeah.
Like I want to read him because he is like channeling my anger right now. I find that Will Liu tends to do that on the Twitter timeline, which I
Yeah.
find entertaining.
Yeah, and I think there are places for all of those. And Will's is backed up by that he's also one of the most intelligent and best basketball writers in the city. The ref stuff kills me, but
Yeah. Well, it's 'cause
I
he's
give
just-
him I give him a hard time about it all the time. But no, so I think there is room to still have that. For me, where a lot of what I do tends to be like more hard analysis, and I've started to try to get more into like magazine style features when I'm gonna story up. It takes a little bit away from it because like I'm analyzing everything so intently all the time that like I don't know, you can't break a play down and then be like, wow, that play was amazing.
Yeah.
Like this is so cool. I don't know. So you lose certain elements of it, but like you still want these people to do well, and I still like all of my followers and readers are Raptors fans, so I want them to be happy and like enjoy good Raptors seasons too. So there's still like plenty of reasons to hope the Raptors do well.
So speaking of breaking down the game really intently, I saw some of your work on the NBA Reddit page because a photo was taken of your notebook.
Oh yeah,
and it looks like text from an ancient time. Like it looks like I don't know, how would you describe it, Mike? And we're gonna put it on.
It's like
on
when
our
doctors
Instagram
write
and Twitter.
prescriptions. It's not really legible. It's kind of got like there's symbols.
I was accused of being the Zodiac killer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I know this is not a visual platform here, but can you describe what you're doing there?
Yeah. So basically what I do is, one, I keep track of the rotations, so who's in and out and what lineups are playing together. All of this stuff is available online afterward, but I feel like if I do it in real time, it helps me kind of crystallize potential story ideas. And then also the biggest reason I still do it, even though like I could do it on my computer and I don't need to do it in this much detail, it keeps me from being off Twitter except during timeouts in the game. And it keeps me from like talking to Eric beside me or whoever is beside me. If I'm writing something down for each play, then I'm focused on each play, and it kind of keeps me from doing whatever. But all the stuff that people were laughing at it's all just shorthand. So it's like, KL P/R KY with a little arrow, and then PS with a triangle 3 is Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard run a pick and roll. It gets kicked to the corner. Pascal Siakam hits a 3.
Duh.
So, right, it seems
Clearly.
convoluted, but like I can fit everything that happened on a play into like a quarter of a line of text, and then what I'll do is like if a play is like if something really jumps out, I'll circle it or highlight it, and then I know when I go back and I'm cutting video later, oh, this is where that play is, and that's why I wanted it.
Yeah, I work in a restaurant, and I know what you mean. Writing little codes that help you remember stuff quicker and write it down quicker.
a little shorthand.
Yeah. So on the topic of story ideas, I am a journalism student as
Awesome.
well.
Where?
Ryerson. And I did some sports reporting for a school paper, and I actually covered a little bit of hoops and game day stories. So when you go into a game day story, when you go into a game day, do you know what your story is going to look like when you post at 10 p.m.? You obviously know the sort of big stories of the day and the general
Theme.
Yeah, themes
totally.
going in and whatnot. But like I was thinking about like this last series where the last 4 games of the series were pretty mundane maybe. So how, like when game 5 rolled around, what was your mindset going in? And
So-
did you know, like how were you going to make it different from the last?
Yeah, so sometimes I'll go in with ideas. Like there are occasions like when the night that Chris Boucher was being presented with his MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, I'm like, oh, this game has the potential to be a blowout. He's getting his 2 awards. A Chris Boucher story tonight, if he gets to play, would make a ton of sense. So you can kind of see, or like Jeremy Lin's debut. Obviously, you're going to write about Jeremy Lin.
Insanity.
Yeah, things like that. That has not gone as well as I thought it would go.
Yeah, a little
That
depressing.
is-
Poor Jeremy.
Yikes. But no, so sometimes you have things like that. And then, so like game 5, I kind of figured that's how the game might go. And I'm like, oh, I can't write the same kind of angle. So my idea for that one was actually, had the Leaf game been close, they would have turned the Leaf game on in Scotiabank Arena after the Raptors game ended, and everyone could have sat there and watched it. When the Raptors game ended, they were down 4-1. But a story idea I had then was like, well, what if I just sit here? I'll skip media stuff because it was a Raptors blowout, and I'll sit here with the crowd and watch the end of the Leaf game. And if the Leafs win, it could be this really cool story about both the teams kind of breaking through that same barrier that they've had the last few years, and like the kind of unity between the city's fan bases, right, as Vlad's getting called up and everything. And then the Leafs blew it for me.
They ruined your story.
So, no, in the playoffs, I probably tend to have story ideas less just because, like, every little thing matters so much, and people won't want to read anything except about that game. So, like, I can't really go in and be like, oh, I'm going to write about Pascal tonight, and if Pascal has 12 points, it is not important in the game. Like, people aren't going to want to read that. So,
do you ever pre-write a little bit going in, or no?
Not for game stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to, like, I won't, even if it's a blowout, I won't start writing until the fourth quarter just because, like, there's too much risk of a comeback.
That's
or
true.
like the story
Yeah.
changing or whatever.
Yeah.
I pre-write a lot for the off season. So, like, I will probably, when July 1st rolls around, I will have not like stories written about like, oh, Kawhi's staying or Kawhi's leaving, because you need the context. But I'll have like shells of posts ready and like my cap updates, like different scenarios ready to go and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I was at Raptors Republican, I ran it because I was basically a one-man team and I wanted to be up fast for everything. I pre-wrote all the time for free agency because it's just like, you know, that either Bismack Biyombo is going to re-sign or he's going to sign somewhere else. So you can get like...
You'd write multiple outcome stories, though,
Yes.
wouldn't you? I remember that, which is a lot of damn work.
Yeah, but it also, like, then when things happen, everything is so much easier.
Oh, then you can,
It's ready to go. You just hit send.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah, you fill in the details, and then you want to leave a little room to, like,
You're the
how
sort of
you,
guy
how
that
you
would
react
do-
to it in the moment.
I feel like you're the sort of person that did your homework when you got home on Friday instead of leaving it till Sunday.
Just to enjoy the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always, like, in all things been very efficient. So I was, like, very, like, I'll just get it done, like, in free period or whatever. And then I would also in high school, like, do my friends' homework so they could come hang
Holy,
out
where
too.
were you when I was
I
in
know,
high school?
it was like,
I needed a friend like you.
looking back on it now, it's awful. But it was like, if I just do it, then we can all, like, go. I didn't drink in high school, but, like, we can all go
Hang out and play sports or whatever.
dick
is
around
it?
or whatever. Yeah. So
I was friends with this guy in high school. I won't name him, but I was like a pretty like decent artist when I was a kid. Like I would draw sketches and stuff like that. And this guy would pay me $10 a sketch, and I would give him the sketches, and he would bring them home, and he would give them to his grandma and say that he drew them.
Oh, wow.
So his grandma thought he was this like,
Why did he want to impress his grandma so bad? That's weird.
well, because he loves her, Max.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's probably the most understandable part of the story. It's more the lying, which was weird to me.
Yeah, I thought he was going to hand it in for his like own assignment at school.
Oh, right.
That's where I
Yeah,
thought it was going.
yeah.
So where you're at in your career professionally, what is the hardest part of your job, or the thing that gives you most anxiety, or like the hurdles that you have to, jump every day that we wouldn't necessarily think about?
I mean, the big thing is that the industry is not super healthy. And, like, I'm very much rooting for the Athletic to succeed as a business model, more for, I mean, obviously for me, so I have a job, but also because if it doesn't, then, we've kind of tried so many things in the sports journalism industry, and, like, Sports Illustrated got bought the other day by, like a brand company, like a company that owns brands. They're not in publishing or journalism at all. And it's like, man, if that's where you go and like suddenly everything is just going to be like advertorial, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so but aside from the state of the industry, like what's a thing like, oh man, only if I could get closer to Masai, or only if I could, those stresses when it comes to like the actual work itself.
I would love to get closer to Lord Ujiri. Yeah.
Lord, you're Game of Zones.
Because I know because I asked that question because I think about like our own struggles with the band. We're like, oh, if we could just get on this tour, if that radio station would play us, it would really make our lives that much easier.
That's
or
a great way to
better.
put it. So what's the equivalent of that for you?
Yeah, so it's always, I mean, you're always kind of thinking about what's next and what you could be doing more of. So the one thing for me is I'll break like some stories, like smaller stuff, but because relationships are so important for me, especially when I want to tell good stories, and you need that level of trust and stuff, I tend not to push very hard on like, hey, is this signing happening, or like what's going on with this? And like if you look at other people who are roughly as established as me, that's usually the next step. Like I'm not talking being Woj or Sean.
Woj bomb, Murph bombs.
Yeah. So if you want to be those guys, that's literally all you can do though.
Yeah.
Like you can't be telling stories or doing
There's no
analysis
feature
or whatever.
pieces
No,
and all that.
it's basically just you. like hammering agents and putting stuff out there. But that's probably the thing that's like, could I be doing more of that? Should I, our conversation earlier, should I cash in a little bit more of that capital to have scoops or inside stuff a little bit more often? Finding that line and the line's always moving. That's kind of tough, especially like as I grow and it's like, okay, well, the next step, I'll probably stay on the Raptors beat. I want to stay on the Raptors beat, but like there are scenarios where I would go to a different company or a different media market, and it's like, there might be even more of an expectation of that kind of stuff. So it's
like when you see like a guy like Royce Young, who's for our listeners is like he was sort of he had a blog about the OKC Thunder. He's based in Oklahoma, and then he eventually gets hired to write for ESPN because he was sort of the guy on the ground there. He's now like a full-time ESPN writer. Is that like a path where you go, shit, I would love to write for ESPN? Like if I could be the Toronto guy for that.
Yeah, I mean, like that's something that they don't have a person in every city.
Yeah,
but. That
Kawhi
kind
stays.
That's an example.
That kind of thing crosses your mind. Yeah, I think the fact that Kawhi came here and they didn't this year, that's maybe not in their plans. But I'm also not rooted here. Like I don't have a wife or kids or anything like that. So
you made it very clear.
It doesn't have to be Toronto. Yeah,
you made that clear in every goddamn article.
So ladies, if you're listening,
yeah.
I wanted to get over to Raptors for a bit, but did you have another question about process?
Let's get into the Raps.
Well, just sort of like some more specific stuff. Who was the most difficult Raptor you've ever covered? You don't have to name names if you don't want.
Name the names.
Yeah, like it's probably Kyle, just because he can be so good, and there are days when he's so bad, like for media-wise. I really like him and get along with him fine, but I've gotten to the point where like I don't even really bother that much, just because like
it's not worth anybody's time.
Exactly, and I feel like that was less of a big deal when DeMar was there because DeMar was so great with the media, and now that Kawhi's the number 2, it's just like the 2 best players on the team you're usually not going to get anything out of, and that is that's unfortunate.
From a media perspective and from a fan perspective, because we obviously want those quotes and know what they're thinking.
Like, look, I don't blame those guys, and it's not a knock on them or anything, but in terms of, like, in an ideal world, your best players would also be really good quotes.
Well, I was actually thinking about the Warriors today, and just, like, I was thinking about Clay, and he is such a good interview. And he's so, like, I find him to be very, like, grounded and he's a great, like, self-awareness about who he is and where he is, like, how he's a part of this world. And I feel like a lot of the Warriors are like, Steph's so well-spoken. Iguodala's really smart. Even Durant can be really good. What are the teams that you are envious? They're like, it would be so much fun to cover this team. I mean, I imagine the Warriors might be one of them. But are there any other teams in the league where you are envious, or you're like, I do not envy those guys because that's a tough gig?
Yeah, OKC's a tough one.
Yeah.
Their PR staff is obviously with the Russ stuff lately. They've come kind of back under fire. But when KD was there as well, that was not a super great.
Yeah, Brian Curtis wrote a whole piece about that, right? For
Yeah.
Grantland, just being like how under wraps everything is.
They protect the players so
Yeah.
much, and it's this
Which,
weird
like,
environment.
that's part of the job. So I don't.
Yeah, they would argue they're doing their job well. The organization,
There are. I think the one team that it would be cool, not necessarily for on-court stuff. You look at the guys on the Brooklyn Nets roster; they're all awesome to talk to. Like Jared Dudley is great, Ed Davis is great, DeMarre Carroll's great. Even some of their young guys are like pretty good, thoughtful young guys. So I think the Nets would probably be the one where it's like, I could spend some time around that team and tell some cool stories.
Yeah. I guess the big question everybody wants to know is, what's the word around the team? Is Kawhi Leonard going to stay? Give us the exclusive here, Blake. You got to be on record as what you think.
Yeah, we're
and what the
breaking
team
it here,
thinks.
man.
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of it kind of like I've said kind of the whole time, like everything hinges on these next 4 to 6 weeks. I thought when they got him, I think the odds are maybe better now than I thought when they acquired him. And the Raptors are very confident that they have done the best they can with anything within their control. So they have treated Kawhi well. He has been a part of the load management process, and he has they've earned his trust with that kind of thing. On court, it has worked very well. He enjoys the city, doing the whole garage to garage thing, so he doesn't have to deal with the cold. So they've checked off all the boxes they could. Now, what it's going to come down to is, one, does he think he can win championships here? And that obviously will be determined over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And two, the kind of family and home factors that the Raptors could never control. Like, if he ultimately decides to go to LA, because that's where the mother of his children and his 2 children want to live, and he wants to be close to family and stuff like that. There was never anything the Raptors could have done to change that
in the first place. Yeah.
So the Raptors are very confident they've done what they can. And then, if they get bounced in 5 by Philly, there's no way he's staying, because you can't make a good competitive argument for, Kyle, Serge, and Mark will be a year older and we have no cap space. And But if you make a run to the finals, or you're very competitive in the Eastern Conference Finals, you're like, hey, look at Pascal. Look at what he's become. Look at all the cap space we have in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Well, the architect...
Vlad's here now.
That's right. Yeah.
But your life depends on it, yes or no. Stay or go.
You could have put me in that position.
On record.
Yeah, I will.
Well, it's hard to say, though, because we don't know how the Raptors are going to
I know, but
Yeah,
at this
and,
point in time, there could be an
honestly,
answer.
look,
If someone asked me with a gun to my head, I would say, I think Kawhi is going.
go like he's leaving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, but we're talking like, maybe it's 55-45 right now.
There you go. Okay, and it is unknowable.
And if they make the finals, maybe that tilts 55-45 the other way.
And you know what's amazing is that this is all based on, like, hypothetically, a couple lucky rolls here and there.
I know.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
The
Like,
breaks
the
of the
fate
game.
of the next 5 years of our franchise could be like, does somebody, like, clink off the back rim, or does it go in?
But that's
You
happened
know?
so much. It's honestly happened so many times in this run. Like, you think back to the Indiana series. That would have been that series was 2-2. They were down in Game 5, down pretty big in Game 5, and it looked like this was going to be the 3rd year in a row that they flamed out in the first round. And then Norman Powell has that epic dunk. They go on this huge run because Frank Vogel won't put his stars back in the game for whatever reason. And then suddenly the Raptors are in control of the series, and they make the Eastern Conference Finals. If they lose that series, Casey's gone. They probably...
Trade DeMar then, yeah.
Yeah,
or blow it up
someone
somehow
is getting
with Kyle.
traded, yeah. Because Messiah's had, like, his finger around the eject button.
Well, that's
with
what
that
Zach
group
Lowe
for a
was saying
while.
on a podcast like last week. He was like, Messiah's been waiting to do a rebuild for like 6 years, but
And
the Raptors keep on like,
He's
over
never going to get to do it, because even now you look like, if Kawhi walks, well, Pascal's become this level, and like maybe you can trade Lowry and Gasol and Ibaka, but you're trying to trade $100 million in aging salary without taking bad money back yourself. Like, you might accidentally win 45 games next year, or at least, like, are you going to be worse than like Detroit and Orlando? Like, probably not.
No.
You went like 17-5 without Kawhi.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Masai, Mike and I have this idea of Masai as being this like genius saint, wise, like just like the perfect executive, and his track record, would confirm that.
I love Masai.
Yeah.
My opinion is this. I think that someone like Masai or good leadership is actually more important than any player.
So to that point, what is your take on Masai, and what do you think gives him that secret sauce? I like asking this question. Like, from your vantage point, what is it about Masai that commands respect or attention, or how is he as a tactician?
Yeah, there's this power of personality about Masai, right? And I think it comes from, one, him being pretty good at the job, but also he is an incredibly charismatic leader. And I think when he gets in a room with someone and he's talking to them and his energy comes out, and he's very, he's very forceful in the way he speaks, and he's very confident. And so I think that tends to do a sales job. But then also you see everything that he is outside of basketball with Giants of Africa, and how much he cares for his players and has tried to improve the lives of his players. And like, I think all of that kind of coalesces into that bit of that charisma that he has, where it's like, okay, this guy is a good leader and he's a positive, he's a positive leader as well. Now, in terms of the actual tactics and things like that, he has won most trades that he's done. He's drafted pretty well here and in Denver.
Is he a good executive in the way he hires people, would you say?
Yeah, they're
Bobby Webster and
Teresa
Nurse,
Resch, Dan Tolzman. He, that's another. Masai has been one of the leaders in the NBA in all sports in terms of having women in positions of power in the organization too. So I think all of those things help. The one area that Masai has not done a great job is free agency. He has signed some bad contracts. There aren't a ton of deals he signed that afterward you were like, oh, that's a huge bargain. And then also they've had to like trade away picks to unload salary to keep this all going, which is fine. Those things happen, but he's not flawless when it comes to the actual moves he makes. So, but I think like he's a top 5 executive in the league. And to your point about you'd rather have Masai than any player, I don't know that I'd go that far.
Here's why, though.
But bad ownership and bad management is the constant when you look at teams like the Knicks, Lakers, Suns that are like for the last little while have been perpetually at the bottom. It's a lack of a stable quality figure like a Masai or Sam Presti or Greg Popovich.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess like obviously LeBron changes everything, or a Kawhi or Kevin Durant. But it basically comes from the idea that you can be a great leader or executive for 40 years. That's 40 years of sustained excellence if they want to stay in the position. A player's window of greatness, true greatness, is maybe a half decade. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just
right, but within those windows, a player has such an enormous
impact on potentially winning a championship.
Right, like
yep.
Although those things are kind of inextricable, right? Because like if you say Kawhi is more valuable than Masai and Kawhi leads him to a championship this year, obviously, Kawhi did that, but Masai Ujiri allowed you to get Kawhi.
Exactly.
So you could there ends
Totally.
up being like almost a chicken or the egg kind of thing there. But I think the enormity of superstars in the NBA and their impact on the court is just you'd trade Masai for LeBron 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, now we're talking. But I've seen LeBron on a bad Cavs team with bad leadership before he went to Miami, and you know what I mean. You see stars wasted all the time without good leadership, and then in the sort of lean years, or if you don't have a superstar, good leadership and management can actually sustain you and a fan base.
I think that's the biggest thing it helps with is sustaining. You look at the Raptors; they're 6 years into this now. Even if Kawhi walks, they're set up to continue to be pretty good. Like they'll have a transition year, then they have Siakam and OG and Fred and a ton of cap space.
Yeah.
You look at the Spurs, who haven't missed the playoffs in 22 years and keep nailing all these late first picks like Derek White, turning Jakob Poeltl into what he's become now. Not that he was bad in Toronto. That stability helps how much you can sustain success over especially transitioning between eras. That obviously Cleveland hasn't done well, Miami hasn't done well. The Lakers have not done well.
That's been a mess. We talked about Magic on our last episode.
Yeah, we did.
Well, Maxie, should we wrap it up? Do you have any more questions for Blake Murphy, Raptors writer extraordinaire?
Well, the last thing I'll just say is that I got a call from our accountant yesterday, and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, why is he calling me? He never calls me, right? I was like, and then I missed the call, and then he called again. I was like, oh, God, like I must owe a lot of money to somebody. Like, something has gone wrong. And then I call him like, hey, what's up? He's like, do you want to go to the Raptors game on Saturday? I was like, yeah!
That's Greg and I will be there.
Well, I'll be there too.
That's sweet.
Let's party. And Blake, will you be there?
I'll be there, man.
Hell yeah. And Erica, you cannot come.
Oh.
I won't be there.
Unless you get a hookup.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blake, thanks so much for coming on.
Do they always treat you like this?
Yes, listen
I
back.
don't.
No, it's part of
Yes,
it's a
it's
radio. It's an old time radio shtick. You make fun of the intern. This is
Oh
not
my
new.
God, yeah. It's such a good time. It's hilarious.
She loves it. All right, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mike on Much can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Mike on Much. You can subscribe to the show on any platform that has podcasts. Spotify, do it.